If I had known what those receipts meant, the crumpled little scraps he forgot to hide, tucked like broken promises in the back of a drawer, I would never have handed him the envelope. I would have asked questions. I would have looked him in the eyes long enough to see the storm behind them. But I didn't. I trusted him the way a younger sister trusts the brother, who once lifted her onto his shoulders so she could touch the low-hanging branches of the oak tree in our childhood backyard. My name is Olivia Hart. I'm 28, a brunette with a habit of tucking my hair behind my ears when I'm anxious, which lately feels like all the time. For the past 6 years, I've been working as an admissions coordinator at Ridgeview Community Hospital. The job pays steadily, but the hours are relentless long nights, unpredictable weekends, and an inbox that regenerates like a hydra every time I step away for 5 minutes. Still, I saved. Slowly, methodically, dollar by dollar, paycheck by paycheck, resisting the temptation to splurge on small comforts. Because I had a dream, a quiet one, the kind you don't confess out loud unless you truly believe in it. I wanted to open a little counseling practice someday. Not as a therapist, I'm not licensed for that, but as a coach, a guide for young adults who feel lost like I once was. I imagined a tiny office with warm lights and plants and books stacked in haphazard little sanctuaries on the shelves. A place where people could breathe. It wasn't much, but dreams don't need to be big to be meaningful. And then my brother came back into my life, at first gently, then like a tidal wave. His name is Ethan, 30 years old, a year and a half older than me. Dark blonde hair that always needed cutting, eyes the soft, uncertain grey of a sky that can't decide whether to rain. As kids, he'd been my protector, the one who stood between me and Dad's temper, the one who shared his bedroom when I had nightmares, the one who taught me how to ride a bike, promising he'd never let go, then letting go too early and cheering me on anyway as I scraped my knees. But somewhere along the way, life had shown him its sharper edges, and he didn't cope the way I did. He chased adrenaline, not stability. Charisma came easy to him, responsibility didn't. There had always been still. I loved him. So when he showed up at my apartment one rainy Thursday evening, drenched to the bone, holding his arms around himself like he was trying to keep from breaking apart, I didn't turn him away. "Liv, I need to talk to you," he said, voice trembling in a way I hadn't heard since we were kids. I let him in. I made tea. I waited. He didn't sit. He paced, raked his hands through his wet hair. His breaths were shallow, strained. "I'm in trouble," he finally said. The words hit me like cold water. "What kind of trouble?" I asked, keeping my voice level, even though dread coiled in my stomach. It's not what you think. He stopped, swallowed hard. "I need money, just for a little while. I swear I'll pay you back." "How much?" He hesitated. Too long. 8,000. The exact amount I had saved for my dream. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. "Ethan, that's all I have." "I know." His voice cracked. "Please, Liv. I wouldn't ask if I had any other choice." I searched his face, trying to read the truth in the shifting shadows beneath his eyes. He looked desperate. But was it real? Was it fear? Or guilt? "What's this for?" I whispered. He looked away. "I can't tell you. Not yet." "Ethan, come on." "I'm not lying to you. I'm not." He stepped closer. "You're the only person I can trust. I just need time. A few weeks. A month at most." My heartbeat was a dull roar in my ears. I wanted to say no. To protect myself. To protect the fragile dream I'd built over years of sacrifice. But the memory of him shielding me during our parents' worst fights tugged at me. The way he used to squeeze my hand and whisper, "I've got you, Liv. Always." And I believed him still, in some small, foolish way. So after a long, trembling pause, I whispered, "Okay." His shoulders sagged with relief. He hugged me, tight, desperate, and murmured, "Thank you. I swear I'll make this right." He left with the envelope tucked under his jacket. That was the last time I saw him. The next morning, his phone went straight to voicemail. My text delivered, but showed no read receipts. By day 3, his number was disconnected. His apartment mailbox overflowed with flyers and unopened letters. His landlord said he hadn't been home. Mom cried when I told her. Dad muttered something about irresponsible habits, and he'll turn up when he needs something else. And me? I waited. I waited for a message, for a sign, for anything. But the silence thickened, becoming a living thing. By the end of the first week, the confusion curdled into fear. By the second, into anger. By the third, into shame so heavy it pressed like a stone against my ribs. But the receipts, the ones he forgot to hide, didn't appear until week 4. I had gone to his apartment one last time. His landlord let me in. 1 hour, he said, unlocking the door. Place is a mess. I'm gutting it next week. He wasn't wrong. The apartment looked like someone had left in a hurry. Clothes scattered, dishes mouldy in the sink, papers everywhere. I searched for clues, a letter, a phone bill, anything. I found nothing. Until I opened his desk drawer. There, shoved in the very back, beneath a broken pen and a crumpled flyer, was a little stack of receipts bound with a rubber band. Some were fresh, others months old. Dates, addresses, names, things I couldn't connect. Hotel rooms, cash withdrawals, purchases he never told me about. And one receipt with a single handwritten note across the top. Don't forget ask for Mara. My heartbeat stumbled. Who was Mara? Why did he need to see her? Why hide the receipts? As I stood in Ethan's abandoned apartment, holding those scraps of paper like pieces of a puzzle I'd never known existed, one realization hit me with chilling clarity. My brother had been living a life I knew nothing about. And now, if I wanted answers, I would have to follow the trail he left behind. If you've never felt the kind of silence that comes after someone you love disappears, let me tell you what it's like. It grows claws. It digs into every corner of your life. It waits for you in the dark before dawn, when your mind is weakest. It follows you into the shower, into work, into the grocery store. Every vibrating phone makes your heart leap and sink at the same time. By the time I discovered the receipts, Ethan had been gone for 28 days. 28 days of trying to hold myself together, while everything inside me felt like it was slipping out through cracks I didn't know I had. The calls and messages. The first week, I called him every hour. The second, I called every morning and every night. By the third week, I stared at my phone more than I spoke to anyone. My voicemail was a graveyard of messages. Hey, Ethan, it's me. Just checking in. Ethan, I'm worried. Please call back. Ethan, this isn't funny anymore. Ethan, damn it, where are you? I tried contacting his old friends. 2 had blocked him months ago. Another said they hadn't seen him since spring. The last one answered only to say, Liv, if he's disappeared, it's because he wants to. You can't fix him. But I wasn't trying to fix him. I just wanted to know if he was alive. The family spiral. Talking to our parents didn't help. Mom cried every time his name came up, clutching the phone like her grief might spill through the receiver. I knew something was wrong, she whispered one evening. He sounded thin last time, hollow, like he wasn't really there. Olivia, why didn't he come to me? Because, I almost said, he was more afraid of disappointing you than he was of hurting me. Dad was less sympathetic. He's doing this for attention, he grumbled. Let him stew. He's always been dramatic. I hung up before I said something I'd regret. Work begins to suffer. By the end of week 2, my boss Carla called me into her office. She was in her 50s, stern but not unkind, with a pair of reading glasses always perched at the end of her nose. Olivia, she said gently, you're distracted. I forced a smile. Just tired. You submitted the same patient file twice yesterday, and you missed the insurance code on the Meyerson intake. My cheeks burned. I'm sorry. It won't happen again. She softened. You're a good worker. If you need time off. No. The answer came out too fast. No, I need to stay busy. She studied me. All right, but if something is wrong, you don't have to handle it alone. I thanked her and left, but her words made something crack in me, because I was handling it alone, and I was drowning. Sleep became erratic. Food tasted like ash. I started drinking too much coffee just to keep my hands from shaking at work. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart lurched, only to collapse when I saw it was a spam text or Mom checking in again. By the 4th week, my friends were worried. Enter my best friend. My closest friend, Ava A., fellow admissions coordinator, cornered me in the break room one afternoon. "Liv, you look like you've been living in a haunted house." I forced a laugh. "I've been sleeping fine." "Liar, your eye is twitching." I pressed a finger to it. "Is it obvious?" "Only if someone looks in your general direction." Ava wasn't the gentle type. She was the rip-off-the-bandage type, and I loved her for it. Eventually, I spilled the truth. The money, the disappearance, the endless silence. "Oh my God, Liv." She wrapped an arm around me. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Because I was ashamed. Because I had been stupid enough to hand over everything I'd saved. Because part of me was still protecting him, even as he vanished. But I didn't say that. Instead, I whispered, "I didn't want to be judged." Ava squeezed my hand. "You're not stupid. You're loyal. There's a difference." The search intensifies. With Ava's encouragement, I did what I'd been avoiding. I went back to his apartment. His landlord, a tired man named Mr. Kim, met me outside the door. "Still no word?" he asked sympathetically. "No," he sighed. "Okay, I'll give you an hour. I have to repaint soon." Inside, the air was stale, like a place that had been abandoned mid-breath. I searched every drawer, every cupboard. I looked under the bed, behind the bathroom mirror, even in the freezer. Nothing. I tried not to imagine the worst. I also tried not to imagine him living it up somewhere with my money. It was only when I was ready to give up that I checked his desk. The top drawers were empty except for some loose coins and dust. The bottom drawer stuck slightly, resisting me. When I finally yanked it open, pens and scraps flew upward, and that's when I saw them. A small bundle of receipts, tied with a brittle rubber band, tucked behind an old notebook. At first I assumed they were normal fast food, gas, maybe some overdue utilities. But the first receipt wasn't for a burger or gas. It was for a hotel room, dated 3 weeks before he disappeared. Room 214, 2 nights, paid in cash. The next was for a jewelry store, a deposit on something expensive, something he'd never mentioned. Then a receipt for a storage facility, then one from an unfamiliar medical clinic. My fingers trembled as I flipped through them. Some were creased and faded, others were freshly printed. The clincher was the last one. A slip of paper from a cafe on the west side of town, with a handwritten note scrawled across the top. "Don't forget, ask for Mara." My pulse stumbled wildly. Who the hell was Mara? I had never heard him mention the name. Was she a friend? A girlfriend? Someone threatening him? Helping him? I didn't know. And that not knowing was the terror that took root in my bones. A decision forms. I left the apartment clutching the receipts so tightly, they bent under my fingers. When Ava saw them later that night, she whispered, "Liv, this is a trail." I nodded, throat tight. For the first time since Ethan vanished, I felt something other than helpless fear. I felt direction. Because these receipts weren't random. They were breadcrumbs. And if I followed them, every date, every address, every cryptic name, maybe, just maybe, I'd find the brother who walked out of my life with my savings and left nothing behind but questions. The night that started, everything that night, I spread the receipts across my kitchen table like a mosaic of secrets. Each one a fragment of a story I hadn't been told. Each one a choice he made without me. And as I stared at them, my heart breaking and hardening all at once, a single truth settled over me. These scraps of paper were the only honest things he'd left behind. And I was done, waiting in the dark. Tomorrow, I would start searching. Not for my money, though part of me ached for it, but for answers, for truth, for Ethan. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I drifted in and out of half-dreams filled with shadows, wearing Ethan's face, running just out of reach. By dawn, my pillow was damp, and my stomach twisted with dread and determination. I made coffee so strong it could have woken the dead and sat at my tiny kitchen table. The receipts spread out like evidence in a dim interrogation room. If someone had walked in, they might have thought I was planning a heist. But no. This was something quieter, heavier. I was planning understanding, justice, closure. I didn't even know which one yet. Organizing the chaos. I began sorting them chronologically, oldest to newest. A pattern started to form erratic, but still a pattern. Month-old receipts from the West Side Clinic. 2 different storage facility payments under slightly altered versions of his name. Hotel rooms, 3 in total, all paid in cash. A jewelry store deposit that made my stomach clench. A cafe receipt with the name Mara. A final large withdrawal from his checking account 2 days before he disappeared. None of it made sense. Why would he need a storage unit? Why stay in hotels when he had an apartment? And why was he at a medical clinic multiple times when he never mentioned being sick? I felt a tremor of panic. What if he was hiding an illness from me? What if he was dying? I shook the thought away. If he was seriously ill, he wouldn't have run from the one person who always cleaned up his messes. Would he? Following the trail, I chose the cafe receipt first. It felt the most human, the most answerable. People who work in cafes notice things. They remember faces, little dramas, regulars. And there was the note, asked for Mara. If someone wrote that on a receipt, it had to matter. Ava insisted on coming with me. "It's not safe for you to do this alone," she said, dropping into the passenger seat of my car before I could argue. "Besides, this beats filing insurance quotes." So we drove to the cafe on West Laurel Avenue. It was a shabby little place sandwiched between a thrift store and a boarded-up music shop. Yellowed windows, faded awning, a doorbell that chimed weakly when we stepped in. The smell hit me first. Coffee, burnt sugar, and something faintly medicinal, like disinfectant that never fully washed out. A barista with strawberry-dyed hair and dark circles under her eyes looked up from the register. "Morning," she said mechanically. "What can I get for you?" "I'm actually looking for someone," I said, heart thudding. "Do you know someone named Mara?" Her expression didn't change, but something in her posture stiffened. "We don't have a Mara working here." "She may not work here," I clarified quickly. "She may just come by. She was connected to someone, my brother." I slid the receipt across the counter. Her eyes flicked to it, then back to me, cautiously guarded. "You're his sister," she said slowly. My breath caught. "You knew Ethan?" "Sort of." She glanced around, then lowered her voice. "He came in a lot. Always seemed nervous. Kind, though. Too kind." My knees weakened. Was he alone? Did he talk to anyone named Mara? A long pause. Then she nodded once. "Mara sits in the corner booth when she comes in," the barista whispered. "They talked a few times. It always looked tense, emotional." "What does she look like?" She hesitated. "Tall, dark hair, expensive coat. The kind of woman who walks into a place like this and looks immediately out of place." I swallowed. "Do you know what they talked about?" "No, but one time, he left shaking, and she left crying." A chill slid down my spine. "Do you know where I can find her?" The girl shook her head. "No, but—" She bit her lip. "I think she comes here because nobody knows her here. She never gives a real name. I only know she's called Mara because your brother said it once." Meaning? Mara might not be her real name. Meaning? Ethan was involved with someone who didn't want to be found. The storage facility. Next on the list, the storage units. There were 2 different addresses, but I chose the one he visited most often. The facility sat off a service road, near the interstate rows of metal doors, stretching endlessly, like a graveyard of forgotten lives. The office manager, a man in his 60s with a potbelly and thick glasses, looked up as we entered. "Can I help you?" he asked. "My brother rents a unit here," I said. "Name?" "Ethan Hart." He checked his computer, frowning. "Don't see that name." "He might have used a variation," I said, sliding some receipts across the counter. His eyebrows lifted at the dates. "Oh, that one." My pulse jumped. "That one?" "Yeah. The guy who never stayed long, always paid cash, always looking over his shoulder." He hesitated. "We thought he might be involved in something sketchy." My stomach twisted painfully. "Can I see the unit?" "Sorry. No access unless you're on the rental agreement." Ava leaned forward. "Sir, please." "She just wants to know if he's okay." He sighed heavily, then motioned for us to follow. "I can't let you inside," he warned, "but I can show you the door." We walked through the narrow rows until he stopped at Unit 237. A small red security tag hung from the lock. "He hasn't been here since, let's see, almost 2 months," the manager said, before he disappeared. I crouched down, peering at the lock. Something caught my eye scratches around the keyhole, fresh ones. "Has anyone else been here?" I asked. "Not officially," the man said with a shrug. Someone had tried to get in, or had gotten in, someone besides Ethan. The receipts, the hotels, the clinic, it all felt connected to something bigger, something wrong. And Mara's shadow hung over all of it. The clinic. Our next stop was the West Side Clinic, a squat, grey building with poorly lit hallways and peeling linoleum. My heartbeat pounded louder with every step toward the reception desk. "Can I help you?" asked a nurse with tired eyes. "My brother had appointments here," I said, placing 2 receipts on the counter. She glanced at them, frowning. "I remember him." "You do?" My voice cracked. "He came in looking panicked. Said he needed test results quickly. Seemed terrified of something." "Test results? For what?" She hesitated. "I can't share that." "Please." Desperation made my voice thin. "He's missing." Her expression softened. "I'm sorry. I really am. But I can tell you this. He wasn't sick. Not physically?" I blinked. "Then why was he here?" She lowered her voice. "He was asking about someone else's records." My breath stopped. "Whose?" She stepped back. "I can't say, but it wasn't his." I swayed, dizziness washing over me. Someone else. Someone he was worried about. Protecting? Investigating? Ava grabbed my arm. "Liv, breathe." But I couldn't, because I knew, deep in my bones, that everything was converging on one fragile, dangerous truth. I didn't know Ethan anymore. He was living a life filled with secrets, strange women, cash transactions, medical inquiries about someone who wasn't himself, and I had just handed him my entire savings without even asking why. The final receipt. That night, I pulled out the last receipt, the one dated 2 days before he vanished. It was from a place I hadn't yet visited, a private address, a house, handwritten on the bottom. 10 p.m. Don't be late. Ask for Mara. The name again. There she was, threading her way through every part of his disappearance, the shadow behind every clue. Ava whispered, "Liv, this is your lead." I nodded, gripping the paper. Because whether she was friend, lover, enemy, or something far more complicated, Mara was the key, and tomorrow, I would go to that address. The night my brother disappeared, he was on his way to see her, and I was finally close enough to the truth to taste its bitterness on my tongue. I barely slept before the morning I went to the address on the last receipt. It felt like my body kept forgetting how to breathe, unless I reminded it. Every hour I woke gasping, my heart beat a frantic fist pounding against my ribs. By the time sunlight crept through my blinds, I felt wrung out and weightless, like a ghost of myself. But ghosts still move. Ghosts still seek answers. I got dressed in silence black jeans, a grey sweater, hair pulled into a low, tight ponytail like armor. I didn't tell my parents where I was going. I didn't want to worry them, and I didn't want to hear my father say, "Let it go, Olivia." He made his choices. No, not yet. Ava insisted on coming again, but I told her no this time. "This is something I need to do alone," I said. She held my shoulders, eyes searching my face. "If you're not out of that house in an hour, I'm calling a SWAT team." I tried to laugh. It came out as a thin exhale. Deal. She wasn't joking. The house. The address led me to the north side of town, an older neighborhood with tall oaks, cracked sidewalks, and wide houses that once belonged to families who had lived and died here for generations. The house I was looking for stood at the very end of the street, a pale blue Victorian with peeling paint, a sagging porch, and a wind chime that tinkled mournfully in the cold morning air. I parked across the street and sat for a full minute, gripping the steering wheel until my palms sweated. "Okay, Liv, you came this far. You can walk 20 more feet." When I finally stepped out, the world felt too quiet. Even the birds seemed to hold their breath. I approached the house and rang the doorbell. Once, twice, a third time, louder. Finally, footsteps approached. Then the door opened just a crack. A woman peered out, tall, dark-haired. Expensive coat hung carelessly over her shoulders, and eyes sharp, haunted, like someone who had been holding back floods for years. "Mara!" I whispered. Her expression shifted. Recognition, fear, exhaustion, before she stepped outside and shut the door behind her carefully, as if she didn't want whoever was inside to hear. "You're Olivia," she said softly. A cold breeze pressed against us, scattering leaves around our feet. I wrapped my arms around myself. You know who I am? Yes. How? She looked away. Because Ethan told me about you. My heart stuttered. Where is he? Her lips parted, then closed again. Something inside her crumpled. Come with me, she said quietly. We shouldn't talk here. Inside the house. She led me inside through a side door, not the front. The hallway was dim and smelled faintly of old wood and lavender. Her heels clicked softly as she walked ahead of me. Please, she said, motioning toward a small living room. Sit. I didn't. I was too wound up to sit still. Mara, I said, voice trembling. My brother is missing. He borrowed all of my savings. He hasn't contacted anyone. And every path I followed brought me here, to you. I need to know what's going on. She stood across from me, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles whitened. You're right, she said. You deserve the truth. The silence stretched until it hurt. Finally she spoke, the beginning of the truth. I met Ethan at the clinic, she said. Not the cafe, not a hotel, the clinic. My eyebrows shot up. You were the one he was asking about? She nodded. I was sick, really sick. I didn't have insurance. I didn't have support. I was hiding from someone who hurt me. Fear prickled the back of my neck. And Ethan, I whispered. He overheard me crying in the hallway one day. My ex had found my new number and left a voicemail threatening to come find me. I guess Ethan saw something in my panic that he recognized in himself. Her voice cracked. He stayed with me, helped me get treatment, paid bills I couldn't pay. He said he'd been trying to be better, trying to outrun old mistakes. My breath shook. That doesn't explain the hotels. He stayed in hotels to avoid being seen at his apartment. He didn't want his old contacts finding me. And the jewelry store? I asked. She hesitated. He was planning to pawn something expensive he inherited from your grandmother. He didn't want you to know, so he made a deposit instead. Trying to buy time, I think. My heart squeezed painfully. And the storage units? She paused, swallowing hard. That's where he kept his old life. Things he didn't want you or your parents to see. Evidence of debts, threatening letters, things from people he used to owe money to. I felt dizzy. Why didn't he tell me? She met my eyes, and for the first time, I saw the truth. Not malice, not deception, just grief. Because he didn't want you involved, she whispered. He told me you were the only person in his life who still believed he could be good. My throat tightened. Then why did he take my money? She flinched as if struck. That was my fault. I stared. What? I told him I had to leave town. My treatment ended, and my ex started showing up in the area again. I needed to disappear, start over. I thought Ethan would come with me, but... Her voice broke. He panicked. He said he needed money to settle old debts before they found me. He said once I was safe, he'd come back and explain everything. My knees gave out, and I sank into the chair behind me. He was helping you, I whispered. He was trying to protect you. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. And now, I said hoarsely, he's gone. Mara covered her mouth, stifling a sob. He left the night before I planned to leave. He said he needed to meet someone to pay off the last debt. He promised he'd be back before sunrise. And he didn't come back. No. Tears filled my eyes. My brother wasn't running from me. He wasn't spending my money recklessly. He wasn't betraying me. He was trying to save someone. He was trying to save her. The final blow. I stood slowly. Mara, who did he go to meet that night? She squeezed her eyes shut. The man he owed money to, she whispered. A dangerous man. Someone who doesn't forgive debt. The room tilted. Do you know his name? Yes. A chill sliced through me. His name is... Before she could finish, something exploded in the hallway. A crash, then a door slamming open. We both froze. Someone else was in the house. Someone who shouldn't be. Mara grabbed my arm, eyes full of terror. Olivia, she whispered, trembling. You need to run. If healing had a sound, I think it would be something quiet like the soft click of a door finally unlocking after years of sticking. That's how the days felt after I left Nathan's apartment, after his confession, after the weight of years of secrets finally cracked open. Nothing changed loudly, no sudden epiphany, no dramatic reconciliation, just small clicks, soft ones, the kind that made room for air I hadn't been breathing. I didn't speak to him the next day, or the one after. I needed space, and for the first time in my life, I allowed myself to take it without guilt. The world felt strangely muted, like everything had been plunged underwater. At work, I was present enough to hold my cases together, but quiet enough that people kept asking if I was sick. Marissa brought me coffee with a sticky note that said, "One breath at a time." I kept it taped inside my drawer. Mom called twice, leaving voicemails asking if I'd talked to Nathan, if he was okay, if I was okay. She didn't know I now held the truth that burned worse than the lie, that he hadn't set out to hurt me, but hurt me anyway, that he had cared, but not enough to trust me with the truth before everything spun out of control. I waited 4 days before I called him. He answered on the first ring, like he had been sitting there with the phone in his hand. "Liv?" His voice sounded hoarse, like he'd swallowed gravel. "I'm not ready to talk about everything yet," I said carefully, "but I want you to know I'm here." A pause. "Not in the same way as before, but I'm here." He breathed out shakily. I could picture him scrubbing a hand over his face. "I'll take whatever you can give," he murmured. "I can give honesty," I said, "and boundaries." He let out a tiny, surprised laugh, painful but real. "Yeah, I guess we both need those." Healing didn't happen in one conversation, but something in me shifted afterward. I realized I'd spent most of my life putting cushions around everyone else, softening falls, absorbing shocks, lowering myself so no one else had to feel small. I couldn't live like that anymore. So I began with something simple, reclaiming my Saturdays. Every weekend for years, I spent them helping someone, mom, Nathan, work, a friend who just needed a quick favor. But I declared Saturdays mine. The first Saturday I slept in, made pancakes, read a book, didn't answer any work messages. The second Saturday I pulled out my old notebook about opening a small emotional support hotline and resource center, my dream before my savings vanished. The idea still made my heart ache, but I forced myself to read the notes. Then I updated them. Then I made a new page titled, "What I Can Do with Even a Small Start." Because maybe the dream hadn't died. Maybe it had just been delayed. By the third Saturday, the ache felt less sharp. A month after the confrontation, Nathan asked if he could take me for coffee. Not to talk everything out, he insisted, but just to sit in public, like siblings who weren't shattered. I said yes. He looked different when I arrived at the cafe, tired but purposeful. He wore a clean jacket, his hair trimmed. I saw effort. That mattered more than anything he could say. We sat outside in the cool air. "I'm working again," he began. "Construction. It's temporary for now, but it's steady." "That's good," I said softly. He nodded, almost bashful. "I'm going to pay you back." His voice wavered. "It'll take a long time, but I'm doing it." I didn't respond immediately. I watched a couple walk by with a dog wearing a tiny sweater. I watched the sunlight shift between the trees. I let myself feel what I felt. "I appreciate it," I said finally. "And I believe you'll try. But I'm not depending on it. My life can't hinge on your choices anymore." He winced, not offended, but hurt in the way truth hurts when it's deserved. "I know," he murmured. "And I'm sorry, Liv. Not just for the money, for making you feel responsible for me, for dragging you into things you didn't deserve." I swallowed, my chest tightening. "Why didn't you just tell me the truth?" He lifted his eyes to mine, raw, ashamed. "Because I didn't want to confirm your worst fears about me. I didn't want to be the brother you couldn't trust." A small, sad smile pulled at my mouth. "But you already were." His face crumpled. "Yeah," he whispered. "I know." We talked for nearly 2 hours. Not about fixes or promises, just about real life. About the clinic I wanted to start someday. About the friends he'd lost and the ones he needed to cut loose. About Dad and how we'd both sidestepped the grief instead of facing it. It was the first honest conversation we'd had in years. When we finally stood up to leave, he hesitated before hugging me, like he feared I might pull away. I didn't. The hug didn't mend everything, but it didn't break me either. When he pulled back, he said, "I'm really going to change." "You're going to try," I corrected gently, "and that's enough for now." Life didn't return to what it was before, because it couldn't, and I didn't want it to. I rebuilt myself in increments. I met with a small business counselor, who helped me outline a realistic version of my dreamer local support program that could begin as weekend workshops with minimal cost. I budgeted, I saved again. Slowly. I spent time with Mom in shorter, healthier doses. I let myself rest more, speak up more, say no more. I allowed myself to be a whole person instead of a safety net. 3 months after the day I found the receipts in that forgotten drawer, I climbed onto the roof of my apartment building at sunset, coffee in hand, wrapped in a sweater that smelled like lavender detergent. The sky glowed in layers peach, rose, then molten gold. Birds skimmed across the horizon. I breathed deeply, letting the air fill spaces inside me that had been hollow for too long. I thought of everything that had happened, the shock of the missing money, the fear, the anger, the shame, the receipt's silent witnesses to a life I hadn't known, the confrontation, the truth that broke and mended me in the same breath. Nathan, trying me, changing. I let the memories settle without rushing them away. Families are messy, trust is fragile, love can wound, but love can also rebuild, slowly, imperfectly, quietly. I didn't know what the future held for my brother, or for us. Trust wasn't restored just because we started speaking again, but it wasn't gone either. It was something new, thinner, but real, earned, not assumed. And as for me, I felt stronger, steadier, more certain of the woman I was growing into. I lifted my coffee toward the fading sunlight, as if toasting the universe, or maybe just myself. If I had known what those receipts meant, I whispered, echoing my own beginning, I might have broken sooner. I smiled, soft but honest. But maybe breaking was what I needed to finally rebuild. And with the sky shifting into twilight, I let myself believe fully, finally, that this was a beginning, not an ending.